Hello and welcome to the New World Review, your source for everything anime and manga, and today I come bearing gifts that you may or may not wish to receive. That's because Hunter x Hunter is the name of this game, and it is going to be our mission to discover the 20 worst nen abilities within the entire series. Not at all an easy thing to do, by the way, and I'm quite convinced that producing this in the best abilities list may have driven me ever so slightly insane, but the results are pretty astounding, and you are going to see some abilities on this particular list that you probably never would have considered. And just to get this out of the way from the get-go, just because an ability here is deemed to be one of the worst does not necessarily mean that the ability is bad. Those are two very different concepts, because even in a group of strictly speaking excellent things, there is always going to be an empirically best and an empirically worst. And in fact, I would personally love to have most of the nen abilities that we are going to showcase here, but exactly how did we deem these 20 Hatsu to land at the bottom of the shame pile? Well, that brings us to methodology, but if you just want to get straight into the list, then you can do so by skipping to this time. However, I would encourage you to stay. And for the less attentive viewers, well, we will have a slideshow in the bottom corner here featuring the ladies of Hunter x Hunter as well as one man. Watch out for the man. Essentially, though, this list ranks nen abilities according to 4 categories, each being assigned a score out of the lovely number of 25, which are then added up into an even lovelier number out of 100, thus giving the ability its final placement. These categories are suitability, which we shall use to measure how well a Hatsu suits its user. Now, generally, I would like to be as objective as possible with stuff like this, but nen use is so intrinsically linked to the desires and needs of its user that we do need to have this one category. Next up, though, we have versatility, which scores how well an ability can be applied in a wide variety of situations. So we're really hunting for the well-diversified use versus niche one-use applications. Our third category is efficiency, which weighs up the cost versus the benefits of the ability. Is the aura investment and any applicable limitations worth the ultimate output? And I will say right here and now that a lot of the abilities on this list are less than efficiently implemented. Yes, I'm looking at you, Chitu. And to round things out, we have creativity, which is designed to reward outside of the box thinking. But why is this category important? Well, it's because many abilities can be quite creatively thought out, but very poorly implemented. Take Castro's double, for example. That ability is manifested in an incredibly creative fashion for a natural enhancer, however, it is exceptionally poorly optimized. That's it for our scoring criteria, but one more thing of note specifically for this video is that super basic nen uses that could be considered technically an ability were not taken into account. And by this, I mainly mean aura blasts. If I included those, then no joke, we would just be going through a list of 20 aura blasts, which is no fun for anyone. So instead, I have elected to provide fun for everyone, and we will begin examining the worst nen abilities in the series with number 20, Instant Lover, wielded by Base. This is going to be the first of many examples of an ability that is not bad, but just lacks a lot of oomph compared to the rest of the nenverse. It's a very basic use of manipulation, although it's much harder to activate than most, and it also produces heavily time-restricted results, only allowing Base to control her target for 180 minutes. Really, the best thing I can say about this Hatsu is that it is indeed very well suited to Base because, beautiful woman plus kissing type ability is generally going to work quite well in the grand scheme of things, but with everything else, it's definitely nothing special. For something I thought was quite special, we now hit 19th place where we find Dr. Blythe. And how could the ability of a royal guard possibly be in this here video? Well, it's because this particular Hatsu is just incredibly poorly thought out. It's what comes of the problem of having nigh on infinite aura. It means you don't have to think and maximize every last drop of aura like a normal person would, and in this case, Dr. Blythe was developed on a complete whim because Pito wanted to battle Kite's corpse. There was no consideration to versatility or efficiency, which actually resulted in Pito being incredibly vulnerable during the palace invasion, and look, while it is a good ability, this is just what happens when a Hatsu was crafted on a whim instead of in response to a profound need. Continuing with our Neko theme now, in 18th place we have Cat's Name, a very intriguing Hatsu held by second Prince Camilla, which very basically explained for anime only watchers, allows Camilla to use the life force of those who kill her in order to resurrect herself. So it's just like killing someone but with a bunch of extra steps, as well as making Camilla completely immune to the concept of murder. Highly suitable given her role in the story, but where Cat's Name falters is sheer versatility. The activation requirement of needing to be murdered is, it's so extreme that it provides little option for greater usage, and if an opponent does find out about the ability, then it becomes completely useless. So a very cool power, but only in a very particular context. But a great ability to have in any context would be that of pressing the subscribe button for the New World Review. Doing so will result in consistent injections of Hunter x Hunter culture being administered straight into your YouTube feed, a very powerful ability, perhaps even too powerful to have been mentioned in this video. So getting back to the less desirables, in 17th place we have one of the few abilities on this list that I would probably not like to have, which is living dead dolls. Effectively, the power to inhabit and control a corpse, something that in retrospect would be almost impossible for anyone but Ikalgo to use due to the painful nature of inserting one's whole self into a body. But that aside, it didn't actually score too terribly, and it landed above average in suitability. Living Dead Dolls was just unable to pass that 50% mark for anything else. To 16th place, we have the Sun and the Moon, a rare Nen ability in the series used by two characters being Krollo and the Meteor City Elder, which immediately makes suitability quite hard to rank, but given that it was a primary factor of protecting Meteor City, as well as a key feature of Krollo's Heaven's Arena victory, I feel like it's pretty damn well suited to both. And the short summary of the ability is that you can imprint Sun and Moon symbols on anything and everything, and when those two symbols come into contact, they go boom. Quite deadly, but as with many abilities here, it does lose versatility points because don't be confused by Krollo's masterful usage of it in the manga. That required like 5 other abilities in tandem with it to work. On its own, the Sun and the Moon, it's alright, but it's still a very weird niche Hatsu. Into 15th place now, we discover Merman Clairvoyance used by Palm Siberia, which is not to be confused with her ant-ability Wink Blue. Merman Clairvoyance was the original crystal ball Hatsu, which allowed Palm to view selected targets after feeding blood to a merman corpse, which, sure. And this really is a pretty decent ability for gathering information or just being a creepy voyeur, but I found it really difficult to just shovel positive points into this one. It is a good ability, but Palm certainly did come up with a much better incarnation after becoming part Chimera Ant. In number 14, we have a Hatsu that kind of surprised me, which is Dance of the Serpent's Bite used by Carlito Zoldyck. Surprised me because I was not expecting to utter the Zoldyck family name in a video like this, very dishonorable, but at the same time, it's just not all that impressive of an ability. The way it operates with all the paper confetti just seems like an incredibly roundabout way to sever limbs or even kill a target, and as such, it even risks giving your opponent a chance to strike you back, which just seems so very inefficient for an assassin, and I really don't see a whole lot of versatility at this stage either, but sure, it's slightly above average in terms of creativity because it is quite unlikely that many people's minds would ever wander to such a mechanism. To number 13, we have a very disappointing ability, being 11 Black Children used by Shachmono. Disappointing because I was really hoping that it would land in 11th place so that I could make some kind of cool numbers-based comment, but that won't be happening now, or likely ever. But this ability is pretty meh. I mean, yes, there is a lot of great benefit in crafting minions to do tasks, but in this case the minions are hyper-restricted in their available commands, and they also require a shocking investment of aura to produce, all of which results in a stunted Hatsu which cannot take full advantage of its intended purpose. Now in 12th place we have an intriguing little existence known as Eddigeron, which is wielded by Bill in the manga. A cool application of enhancement that accelerates the growth of living things and can even be used on humans to improve their Nen abilities. Sadly though, it's hard to say that this is well suited to Bill given his role as a bodyguard due to its purely supportive nature. It does have quite a decent score for efficiency though, because an investment of aura from Bill can lead to much more effective use of Nen abilities by others. Unfortunately, not the user of Eddigeron specifically though. So yeah, it's a nice utility to have in more group style situations, but certainly not quite what I would be gunning for. And something else I wouldn't be so keen on is number 11, Tiger Fist Bite, the trademark technique of one Castro. And Castro pretty much exists in this series for a singular purpose, which is to display how Nen can be heavily misused. And in this case, what truly tanks Tiger Fist Bite would be creativity. It has practically none of that. It barely qualifies as an above average invocation of enhancement, and is really only as powerful as it is due to Castro's Nen affinity. It is well suited to Castro due to his profession, but the effect itself would be fairly efficient to produce even for non-natural enhancers, and that is a problem in and of itself. If an enhancement ability is easy for say a conjurer to replicate to even half or a quarter of the degree of effectiveness, then you probably should have thought a bit better about your enhancement prowess. Breaking the top 10 now, we have Hotel Rafelsia from Shoot McMahon. This is an ability that I really think has consistently underperformed in the series. It does have a creative premise, I'll give it that, but its implementation leans more and more on the inefficient side, because to completely trap an opponent, or even trap most of them, you will basically need to give them a full body massage. And yes, the first hit on an opponent is going to be quite disorienting, but this is another one of those powers that just does not do enough in a timely manner. The cost and methodology of implementation really do outweigh the results, but once again, I do quite like the idea. Something I like a lot less is our 9th place finisher, Scissor Hands, brought to us by Benolt. He cuts some hair with his favorite of scissors, then eats the hair to learn physical information about the target. So that's pretty funky. I'm sure it has a use in applied science somewhere, but it's definitely not quite suited to Benolt. It actually seems very Pito-esque really, Benolt wanting to satisfy this desire to learn more about those he kills, rather than assisting the process of delivering said kill. So versatility, like much of my body hair in the shower, is down the drain, but to balance that out, it is at the very least least quite creative. I do have to give it that. Also quite creative is number 8, a little known ability called Predator used by an even lesser known character, Rihan. And this one is, it's a bit complex to explain, but it essentially acts as an instant win condition against any target so long as you meet a plethora of crazy criteria, which is very difficult, and Rihan himself is actually called the Hatsu highly inaccurate and a very risky ability. So the only place where it truly thrives is suitability due to Rihan's current situation in the Succession War. But I mean, in theory, and I want to stress, in theory, this is an ability that could defeat Meruem, because the idea is that the Predator, over quite some time, evolves into the natural predator of the target. But in Meruem's case, it would be nigh on impossible to pull off. So it's high risk, high reward, except the reward is always the death of someone or something else. So in effect, it's actually high risk for painfully niche results. In 7th place, we now find Freedom, and this is the second time an Ikalgo related ability has appeared on this list. Poor Octobody. And it pretty much amounts to Ikalgo turning his tentacles into an air rifle. So crafting a gun, which is, it's kind of uncreative, and it's also woefully inefficient because the rifle needs to be recharged after every shot. And as for suitability and versatility, look, it's average. Smack, bang, average. Freedom just doesn't do enough anywhere, if anything, and doesn't deserve my praise. Go away. Similarly to number 6, which is Battle Waltz, and this is always fun because every time I make a Hunt video with the word worst in the title, it is almost guaranteed that Guido or his ability are going to show up in some form, and this is no different. Battle Waltz is a very cute use of Nen, more of a novelty really, with heavily restricted versatility, below average efficiency, and creativity is pretty lackluster. In fact, the highest score it receives in any era is 50% in versatility, because even for a Warrior of Heaven's Arena, let's be real, this kind of sucks. And in keeping with that theme of Heaven's Arena suckage, we are now back to Castro with Double in 5th place. So I kind of went over this in the intro, but the obvious factor that plummets this Hatsu is efficiency. Castro is a natural enhancer who chose to dive into both conjuration and manipulation, the two most unfriendliest of affinities. As such, the aura cost of Double would be exorbitant, and the nature of the Hatsu would be incredibly limited as a result. But it certainly does garner some points for creativity because it is actually quite a clever use of Nen, and one that we surprisingly don't see all that often, even from characters who are much more friendly towards conjuration and manipulation. Speaking of friendly, Cheetu is not. Of course, his abilities were going to show up, and Tag ranks in 4th place, which allows its user to trap a target in a pocket dimension, commencing a fun little game of tag to be played out over the course of 8 hours. And this is legitimately not a bad ability. In fact, it might even be good. Like many of the ants, this wasn't properly thought out, but there is a lot of potential. The reason why it lands in 4th place, however, is purely suitability. Tag is completely counter to Cheetu's goals, desires, and natural advantages. And if anything, the very idea of Tag hands that advantage to his opponents. Although the icing atop the cake of shame is that Cheetu doesn't even know what would happen if his ideal conditions of not being caught for 8 hours were met. He doesn't understand how his own abilities work. It could very potentially even result in a negative effect for him, so very, very bad suitability. For a bit of a shock now, in 3rd place, we have Limited Transformation, which is the ability that really does solidify Hunter x Hunter as one of the most memorable anime and manga series in existence. However, that does not make this a good ability per se, and you'll notice that there is a mere 1 point in efficiency, and that's because Limited Transformation basically acts as a glorified suicide bomb. You exchange everything, your Nen, your potential, and your life for a brief period of ultimate power, which really only works if you're gone actually, because that ultimate power would be significantly less in anyone else trying to invoke this style of effect due to their lack of natural talent. And the only way you would ever want to use this ability is to make sure that your enemy dies alongside you, which is a very niche application of Nen, but it also becomes less effective over time as you do actually reach your full potential. So you need to be super young, willing to die at a moment's notice, and have someone you want dead so badly that you're willing to make all of the above work. So yeah, not exactly the best of the powers. Great drama though. Great drama. Still, Limited Transformation did receive more points in our 2nd place finisher, which is Nen Exorcism, an advanced brand of Hatsu held by both Abangane and the Chimera Ant Hina, and both of their exorcisms are kind of being lumped together because they are more or less effectively the same thing. Nen Exorcism just has very little versatility. As far as we're aware, it can only be used to deal with Nen curses, and Nen curses themselves are pretty exceedingly rare, and in fact in this world as a whole, Nen use in general is exceedingly rare. So there's very little opportunity to use exorcism, and even when you do stumble upon said opportunity, you need to be ready to accept a detriment in direct proportion to the curse you vanquished. It's unappealing on almost every level, basically saddling its user with an end curse in that rare scenario where they discover one to dispel in the first place. But at least it's not our number one worst Nen ability in Hunter x Hunter, which according to my statistics would be Crossbow and Claws, once again brought to us by Cheetu. Yes, the ability to conjure a basic object with no special functions worth crafting from aura, and abysmally low suitability to Cheetu himself, considering that he is faster than the crossbow. Crossbow and Claws is simply a desperate show of stupidity, and not an inability that any one of us should ever aspire to. But if you'd like to see some abilities that perhaps we should aspire to, then please do check out this video featuring the top 10 best Nen abilities in the series. Some really great stuff, so I look forward to seeing you there.